Hey, it's been a minute. I wanted to say hi to you and just kind of have a little bit of a chat because if you've been around for a while, you know, on Blushing Phoenix, there are times where I'm like hot and heavy and I just want to share all the things with you and I want to have all the guests on the show and I just want to give you all the things that I wish I had when I was trying to learn more about chronic blushing, flushing, and erythrophobia. And then there are other seasons where I'm just rolling. I'm just rolling with it. And I don't feel the pressure of like trying to constantly strive to do things with Blushing Phoenix. And the cool thing about that is that because Blushing Phoenix has been around since 2019 and there's just so much content there, it's constantly readily available to people who are just now finding out about erythrophobia and that there's a term for fearing blushing. So anyway, I hope that you all were able to listen to the interview with Colin Clem. That was my last video that went up, and Alondra Sanchez as well. Two incredible guests on the channel. And I know that those videos are a little bit longer, but maybe at some point I'll get in a focused mood and chop their videos up a little bit to make shorter form content. But either way, my goal here is to just give you the content, give you the resources so that you have the options available to you to be able to listen to something. And if you like hearing this type of content, but you would prefer to hear it on a podcast, I do have the Ignite podcast. I have not uploaded Colin's there yet. I ran out of space, my storage. I ran out of storage on my podcast, but I plan to get his episode up so that if you're like me, when I go running, I like to actually listen to a podcast and not be watching something. So for some reason, if I know it's on YouTube, I just want to watch it instead of just listening to it. But anyway, so how are you? How have you been? A little update on myself. My baby turned 3. What? So my baby turned 3. Axton, if you have met him or seen him on the channel before, he turned 3 last week. And I am just really feeling great because it's usually around this age also that they start sleeping better. And so I just feel better. If you've been on this journey with me over the past year since I moved to South Carolina, I just feel amazing. You guys and gals, like I just feel so good, and I feel so good about who I am and where I am in my life right now. In January, in December of last year, I decided that I wanted to run a 5K, and in May, my daughter and I ran that 5K. Some of you were along for that journey as I talked about it on the channel and on my social medias, and we ran that, and I just started feeling so great in my body. I lost a lot of weight. And I think it's just that, you know, the baby's 3 and I'm coming up for air now. I've spent a lot of time really finding my voice. I spent a lot of time becoming a little more desensitized in the environments around me. You know, one of the things, sorry, my nose is itching so bad. But one of the things that I talked about is like when I first became very aware, self-aware, I went from this lack of awareness to self-aware, where you become self-conscious in every environment that you're in, where I just was constantly thinking about myself and what other people were thinking about me and how I felt and how I looked. And did people feel like I was paying attention? Like it was like people pleasing on crack, and it just really zapped my nervous system to where I would constantly be flushing red because I was just so aware of myself in the environment and how I was being perceived in the environment. And coming into this new land has really helped me detach from these old ideals and just come into this expression and this freedom of who I am and how I show up, and how people feel about the version of me that they get when I show up is not really a me problem. It's kind of a them problem because if people are so dialed in on me and how I make them feel, that's not something I can keep up with. There's absolutely no way I can carry the weight of that constantly. And so just being able to show up in environments and let that go. Also, if you've been along on the journey, you know that I came into January wanting to make some new connections in my land, and I did that. And one of the first things I do when I'm getting to know a person and they're asking about like what do I do for work and hobbies, I tell them about Blushing Phoenix. I met someone last week and we talked about like individual projects that we're working on. And one of the things I shared with her was that I have an organization called Blushing Phoenix and what it is. And I love educating people on what it is so that they are aware when they go into their environments, or they share a story with me about themselves or about somebody they know or people that they know, and they had no idea that it could create such a harsh mental impact on some people. So it's cool to be able to get out into the environment and talk about something so vulnerable. And it just doesn't have that same impact that it did at one point. Let's see, it's July 29th and we're headed into August. And I think about the goals that I've had up until this point, and how it's like, how do I want to finish the year? And I honestly haven't had much to say here because I just haven't thought much about blushing, and I haven't been flushing much. And I was telling my husband, I'm like, the cool thing about Blushing Phoenix is that I can always get on here and turn the camera on and just start talking to you guys about where I'm at. Because even if I'm not struggling, and I don't plan to struggle anymore, I can still tell you about that. Because for those of you that are on this journey and feel like it's so hopeless and you're so alone, it's still important for you to hear that there's life beyond blushing. And just because I'm beyond blushing doesn't mean that I have to stop talking about it, and that I could actually circle back around and tell you that this is what you have to look forward to. Like, you are going to live your life beyond blushing, and you're going to forget about blushing because you're willing to shift your mindset about how you're thinking about blushing, and because you're willing to show up. And two things that I've been doing over the past couple of months. Number one, if you have not looked into human design, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you look into it. There's a lot to it. So I would recommend that you download an app about human design and take the little test. All it needs to know is your name, your birth date, time of your birth, and the location, city, and state of where you were born. And you're not going to answer a bunch of questions. It's just going to give you your human design system based on that information. Then when it tells you what you are, I don't like labels, so I have a hard time with like, it's because I'm an XYZ. But I feel like it's such a great guide for helping you move through your life in a lot of areas in your life where you may have a lot of resistance, or you hear people say, if you do this thing this way, this is going to be your outcome. But for some reason for you, it's never the outcome for you. Look into human design because there's certain ways that people operate that get them results. And then there's for other people within the human design system, it just doesn't work for you. So find out what you are, and then go on YouTube and look up and do research and just listen to what they have to say. If you feel like you're struggling, or you have these mental battles with yourself, or you feel like you should be doing more, you feel like you're constantly in conflict with yourself in your inner world, check out human design. And as a woman, the other thing I've been doing is cycle syncing. Okay, I'm 39 years old. I'll be 40 in March of next year. And I have learned so much more about my body and about the menstrual cycle in the past year than I have in my whole life. And one of the things that I did was download an app for cycle syncing to look at where I was in my cycle and how that impacts me. You know what sucks is I was just getting into the flow of telling you all the things, and then my camera battery died. It's been a while since I've been on here and charged my camera battery, but I believe I was talking to you about cycle syncing and menstrual cycle stuff. And so essentially what that means is that I downloaded an app and I was looking at like how I react during different parts of my cycle. And there are times where I feel more creative and more engaging and more social. And there are times where I just feel more like I want to be a hermit and I want to be alone in my thoughts. And I don't want to be out and about and energetic. And that's okay. And when you cycle sync, you kind of match your month up with how you know you're going to be. Now, it doesn't mean you can do that and just not show up to things because you're feeling a little moody and a little bloated. There are times to absolutely push through, show up anyway. For example, last month I had some client meetings. I was feeling extremely anxious. Felt like I just did not know what I was doing. I've done what I do for many, many years. I know that I know what I'm doing, but for some reason I just felt so incapable. Have you ever, side note, have you ever just been driving your car and feel like, I'm not capable of driving this vehicle. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe that's just me. But sometimes I just am so in my head that I'm like, do I even know how to drive my car? Do it like just this is a strange place sometimes, but I do know how to drive. I am not a threat on the road. My family might say something different, but I do know how to drive. But there are just times where like I overthink it and I'm like, how am I capable of doing the things that I'm doing when I still feel like a 12-year-old girl on the inside sometimes? But anyway, so I have been what I call doing a human experiment where I checked into the human design, how I best operate as a projector is what I'm called, and also cycle syncing. And last month was the first month that I just felt just really okay. Like in my being, I didn't feel like I had to be forcing myself to work on all these creative projects and do all these extra things and go and do. I just felt like I could just be. And I showed up better. I showed up better in my day-to-day life. I showed up better in my work. I showed up better with creative thoughts. It's like creative thoughts were coming to me instead of me trying to force creativity. And just resting. It was really nice. And then also with cycle syncing and seeing like, hey, I'm moody today, but that's just today. I still got to show up. I still got to do what I got to do. I still got to be present. But that's okay if I just want to like eat the extra carbs today and call it a night. That's totally fine. I think for high performers and people who feel like they have something to offer the world, we just feel like we're constantly running out of time. And that is no way to live. It's exhausting. So anyway, that's kind of what I've been doing over the last month and into this month, just following that same experiment, just kind of observing how I am in time and space and what I do with my time and how I show up in the world. And it's just been really nice. And it has really defined what it means to be present for me. So anyway, I just wanted to jump on here, say hi to you, share what's been going on with me lately, talk a little bit about flushing. And the other thing I was going to share with you is that when I was doing the cycle sync, well, I am doing the cycle syncing, but you have your luteal phase, which is when you're a little more on edge, and there's a drop, I believe, in your estrogen. I flush more during luteal phase. So anytime that there's that drop in my estrogen, I do start to flush more. I've noticed that because I just feel more overwhelmed and overstimulated during that time. So I have seen some, I've seen some things through doing that human experiment in regards to flushing, but I just haven't had a lot of flushing happening. And if it is happening, I'm not paying much attention to it because it just happens and I move on. I'm not so hyper fixated on it that it's kind of creating more of it. You know what I mean? Like I've talked about it before, that the more we think about it and the more we think negative about it and the more we project our thoughts onto other people about what they're going to think about us because we're flushing, the more it reinforces that flush, the more it creates the fight or flight reaction in us, the more it makes the adrenals do what the adrenals do, and it makes the blood vessels dilate. So when I'm not getting freaked out in my mind about it, I might get a little blotch or something, but it goes away or I don't feel it for long. And because in a lot of the social interactions I've been having, I tell people about it. I don't know if it's happening or not because now they're aware. So it's not going to be this shocking thing if it does happen. So something about that just diffuses my nervous system, I guess. And there's just life beyond blushing. And the more that I had made it my mission to heal my body, and even more so than that, just to show up and live my life, the more I decided, like, I'm going to live my life, the less I let that stop me. And it starts to lose its power when you are not empowering it anymore. When you fear it, you give it power. So for me, it was learning to not fear it and not let it dictate whether I'm going to show up or not, and not let it dictate the activities that I'm going to do. When I planned out my year in December for what did I want to accomplish in 2024 and what do I want 2024 to look like and who do I want to be in 2024, there was no room for being limited by blushing. That's just not a thing. So I built my plans around how I want to be and how I want to show up. And the fact that I can show up and have conversations with people, and when we're talking about what we do for work and what we do for our hobbies and anything else that we do, I can just so openly talk about blushing Phoenix. It's not that big of a deal. But the reason why it's not that big of a deal is because I stopped letting it be such a big deal. By continuously reinforcing to myself it wasn't a big deal, but it's more than just saying it. I had to actually show up in environments to start teaching myself it's not that big of a deal, and people are not going to abandon you because you blush. So you all, we've got it's coming up on August. We've got a few months left in the year. And if you're anything like me, I'm just taking a moment to look at my year up to this point. I feel very happy with what I have accomplished this year, and not just what I've accomplished, but just who I am and my mindset and how I'm showing up in the world, the people that I've met, where I've spent my time this year. But the year's not over. And so I think that it's time to sit down, and I got me a little notebook. There's a lot of paper over here. This little notebook to map out my plans. I just want to write out and journal some things about okay, well, in August, September, October, November, December, what do I want those months to look like? What do I want my fall and winter months to look like that are going to empower me and grow me? Even if that just means I'm wearing cozy, warm clothes and drinking left-hand milk stouts. If you have not had a left-hand milk stout nitro, you pour hard, and it almost looks like coffee, and it's so delicious. It's a stout. So summer is my IPAs and winter are the stouts, but I haven't found anything better than a nitro left-hand milk stout. So if you have any recommendations, let me know. I'm happy to try those. But what do I want winter to look like? What do I want fall to look like? How do I want to be? How do I want to show up? What do I want to provide back to this world? And what do I want to take for myself from this world? So this is just me dropping in to say, hey, tell you there's life beyond the blush. I'm living beyond the blush. If you've been on this journey with me, you have seen where I was and where I am now and how I'm continuing to show up. You have this same opportunity. That's why I did all this, was to heal myself and show you that it was possible to overcome erythrophobia. So if you are kind of in your head a little bit and you still feel stuck, we still have time in this year to accomplish things, to change our mind about things, and to show up differently in the world. So this is just me reaching into your world and saying, you still got time. You're not running out of time. And even sometimes the restful seasons and the seasons of battling yourself is still moving you forward. All right, I hope that's helpful. And until next time, I'll see you in my next video.